Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. And before this episode officially begins, just want to hop on for about 5 minutes and talk about a few things. First of all, I'm Marcia Jones-Washington, and what you would already know if you've been here before, but if not, I do want to introduce myself. Um, but before we really get into this 30 minutes with, I want to again share with you that for one, it is definitely more than 30 minutes this week. We're taking on the topic of grief and grieving during the holidays. So we just ran over. I was going to try to edit some things out, but my guest suggested, well, why not? We could do it two-parter. And I thought, you know what rather than get into that, this will just be a longer episode. And for those who maybe this topic applies to you, or maybe you are looking for information to pass along to someone else or minister to someone else with what you learn through this program, then of course this extra time you can consider it an investment, and you won't mind. Maybe it'll take you two sittings to view it all or listen to it all. But I'm glad you're here. And again, we didn't even cover everything in the 40 minutes or so that the interview ran. So I wanted to share some of these things that I'm going to talk about, which is, for one, we didn't get to cover with holidays. If you're grieving during the holidays, or even if there is a birthday, anniversary, special occasion coming up, and you're not sure how to handle that time, have a plan. Okay, have a plan. uh, Certain dates, they're going to come up. Christmas Day, it's coming up. With birthdays, anniversaries, have a plan, such as what you want to do on that day or during that time, and who you want to spend that time with, if anyone. You may decide that, I know that person's birthday is coming up. I just want to stay home and have my own little pity party. You're allowed to do that. You're allowed to do that. But if you involve others, decide on if you want to watch some movies, go out to lunch, whatever it is you want to do, but make sure they also understand that, you know what, you might have a change of heart at the last minute or the day or so before. So let them know, please understand my emotions are up and down. I might have a change of heart. And, if you want to have a backup plan, fine. But just let them select individuals that will extend grace to you, just as you really have to extend grace to yourself during this time. So that was one thing we didn't cover. I also had wanted to talk about a couple of books. I work as a bereavement coordinator, and a couple of books that I suggest or my agency uses and information to others are these books. One is called Heartbroken. The author is Gary Roe, and this is specifically for spouses. It's Heartbroken, Healing from the Loss of a Spouse. And but I've gotten good feedback and comments back from individuals that I've sent this book to, and so want to suggest that to you if you have lost a spouse. The other book is for those who may need to minister to a child or children. And this one is called When Your Child Is Grieving. When Your Child Is Grieving by Amy E. Ford. And it's also the subtitle, God's Hope and Wisdom for the Journey Toward Healing. So that's the thing with both of these books, the When Your Child Is Grieving and Heartbroken. They are from a faith-based perspective, more specifically, Christian perspective. And so I want to let you know that, because if that's something you're not looking for, then those books will not be for you, probably. But I wanted to let you know those are a couple of resources in terms of books that I personally and my agency have referred out to others. I also wanted to mention Grief Share is mentioned during this interview. And so with that, I will have a 1-800 number in the information box or description box, so that if Grief Share is something you may want to reach out to, they're an agency or a ministry really that's been around for quite a long time. And so they offer grief support groups to individuals. And so you can find one that is near you by getting in contact with them. And you can go online first, put in your zip code even, and find a closest Grief Share location for you. And then I also wanted to cover something that we didn't get to discuss in the interview, I don't think, is that grief can actually apply to a number of things other than the loss or the death of an individual, which is mainly what we covered. But grief can be experienced in job loss. If you have had a loss, well, divorce or a friendship, those types of losses can cause grief. A location or a move, you can grieve over where you have needed to move from. And I know personally, even if you made the decision to move, as in with my husband and I made the decision in 2021 to sell our home and move to downsize. But afterwards, there was still that sense of, wow, we miss our garage, or we miss a few different things from the house. So those types of losses can occur and also bring about the feeling of grief. And then I definitely don't want to forget pet loss. People who have experienced the death of their pet. Pets can be like another family member. And so I do understand that those type of grief feelings will certainly come about when a pet dies. So again, those were some things we didn't get to cover in the interview and in our discussion, even though it went a little bit longer. And I do just want to say, for any of you watching this that have experienced a loss and you are grieving, my heartfelt condolences to you. And if you want to include down in the comments a prayer request, I will be glad to add you to my prayer calendar and that request, and I will take it seriously. All right. Well, again, thank you for stopping by. I hope you will enjoy this discussion, or you will find it meaningful to you. And so let's just get into that. God bless you. Blessings, blessings, everyone, and welcome. So glad that you are dropping by once more today. And if this is your first time, well, I'm glad you have found us. Yeah, this is 30 Minutes With, and I am Marcia Jones-Washington, the founder of PA Women of Chaplaincy and Pastoral Care, which is an online ministry for women in chaplaincy and other areas of ministry to connect. And I consider this to be an extension of that, because I'm usually sitting down for about 30 minutes with a woman who is a chaplain or in pastoral care or some form of ministry. And so today is no different. And I'm just very excited about today because if my counting is correct, this is the 12th episode. And you know, I love the number 12. It has special meaning. You know, it has those biblical connections, the 12 tribes of Israel. You know, we have the 12 disciples, of course, and then the 12 days of Christmas. Okay, no, that's not biblical. I know. But at the time of this taping, it is already past mid-November 2025. So we are heading in that season where you'll be hearing songs like the 12 Days of Christmas and other festive songs. But Me and my guests today know that not everyone is in that type of festive mood. And our conversation today is actually going to be about grieving during the holidays. So I want you to know that I have a very special guest, as I said. She's someone I'm delighted to have here today, and her name is Pastor Flo Demus. Pastor Flo, welcome. How are you today?
I am wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. It's just a pleasure to be here with you. And I so appreciate the work that you're doing. So it's an honor to be a guest.
Oh, thank you. Thanks so much. And yeah, as I was saying in the intro, we're going to talk a little bit about grieving during the holidays. But before we jump right into that, I just want to say, with some of those watching that are maybe from the Pittsburgh area, or those who are familiar with Cornerstone Television and a program called Sister to Sister, you are one of the co-hosts on that program. But if you wouldn't mind, would you tell us a little bit about maybe what your ministry was, your experience before you came on that show, or even in addition to being on that show now?
First of all, I am so grateful that you opened with that because um, Sister to Sister is definitely not my spiritual identity at all, though I'm very humbled and grateful to be on that panel. Um, I have been in ministry long before Sister to Sister. I think we're maybe 10, 13 years into Sister to Sister, which again, I'm very thankful for. I'm very thankful for Channel 40, our local television station. But by the grace and mercy of God, my first intro to Cornerstone, I was behind the scene. I was a prayer partner way back when they had Steve Toten, who was heading that up. And then from there, I did some producing of some shows myself. I won't get into all of that, not with Cornerstone, but with other television stations and different media sources. Mostly, I did do some here nationally, but did some things internationally. And then for a season, I feel God had me put that down. And there was the birthing of a ministry called Kingdom Sake. And Kingdom Sake was a behind the scenes ministry because my ministry was birthed from a place of intercession, if you will. I cut my teeth on soul winning and then and intercession. And so Kingdom Sake was a ministry that was considered a modern day Barnabas style ministry. We were the Moseses who would say, let Reuben live. We were the Naaman's wife servants. We were the spiritual midwives. And so if, for example, you were having a conference, we would come alongside of you because any vision that God gives you is going to be bigger than you. And I so believe what our elder brother prayed before he went on. He said, Lord, make them one. He asked his father, make them one as you and I are one. And while I believe many of us are praying for revival, he's still praying for unity. Because that releases the commanded blessing. And so that has been my heart, to be, a dawning needle, if you will, that would help to weave the fabric of the body of Christ coming together in a spirit of unity. And so we had that privilege with Kingdom Sake when we first started. We worked with different ministries. If you were having a conference, we would come alongside and we would be whatever it was you needed us to be. Help with registration, usher, prepare food. If you needed us to teach, do a workshop, we did that. We did some trainings. Kingdom Sake did a lot of training, leadership training, prophetic training, intercessory training, strengthening leaders and helping people to find their purpose, their gifting, their talent, and using it for the excellency and the building of Christ. So I like to think that God has graced me with the Bezalel anointing.
All right, all right. And well, I've learned so much about you in that because, for one, I didn't know you used to be one of the prayer partners on Cornerstone. And then this other ministry you had. How wonderful. I'm sure that was a blessing to many of the smaller type ministries that needed assistance and needed someone or individuals to step in and, support them in those ways. So that is so wonderful. And then I just want to talk to you about the talk to you about the aspect of ministry where, it involves walking alongside with people as they're going through difficult times, challenges, grief, and loss. And so, that's something that we can kind of get accustomed to. But I've found that even though I've done that with others, when I am going through a loss or grieving, it still doesn't make it any easier for me. Would you say the same?
Absolutely. And, again, I'm so blessed for this question. Often we have used media to be entertainment, but it should be education by way of entertainment if you're going to fall it in that category, put it in that category. And what you just said is so pertinent, because I think oftentimes, and you yourself deal with leaders, you deal with people in ministry, and somehow we have been deceived. A lot of us, maybe not all, but a lot of us have found ourselves putting on masks for the needs of the people instead of being transparent. Even Jesus, when he got ready to come into the fulfillment of why he came to earth, his disciples fell asleep on him. And he wept and he cried and he called on his father. And he even said, can this cup, is there any way this can be done differently? Can this cup pass for me? And the people who'd seen him in ministry in all his glory, if you will, they were asleep.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't even sense, they didn't even connect with him that he himself was dealing with something. They only knew Jesus who healed, the Jesus who taught, the Jesus who, who disciplined, the Jesus who loved, the Jesus who, did things so differently and brought the God that they were worshiping to life and was bringing them into relationship with him. And you would think after all of that they wouldn't handle him so casually or so dismissively. But yet, in his greatest hour in need, those that walked the closest with him fell asleep. And we don't find it any different. Because people look at you and they see the anointing on your life. They feel the virtue flow out of you. They see you itinerant speaking. They see you visiting the sick. They call you when they need counseling. And they don't think subconsciously or consciously that you deal with anything, and the misunderstanding of scriptures is something that is very real. And sometimes I've been guilty of it myself, but sometimes when you go through things, the scripture begins to come alive and the revelation of it comes alive.
Yes.
I believe that God reveals to heal. And so even in the depths of our pain, there's a healing that comes from the God of wisdom himself. Because you find yourself in a place of solitude, not isolation, because that's where the enemy works. But you come into a place of solitude. And God begins to show you scriptures that you have read, taught on, shared time and time again. Suddenly they come alive in a whole nother way.
Yes, yes. Wow. And, Pastor Flo, I do know that with you, your husband had passed a few years back or several years ago. And I just wonder for you, what did you find helpful to you in getting through that initial period? Because I know that with grief, it's not just for like a few months or what have you, but what was helpful maybe during that initial time period for you? And then, what things were maybe suggested or said to you that weren't very helpful?
So let's start with that helpful. One thing was I allowed myself to grieve. I refused to put on that flake cloak of, whatever it is, all the little cliches that we say. And I think, to be honest with you, Marcia, I learned that I was blessed to be a caregiver for my father. And I was a daddy's girl. There's three of us, and we were all daddy's girls. And I had probably one of the best earthly fathers anybody could ever have, who set me up, little did we know, for the relationship with my heavenly Father. And so when my father passed, by that time, because I had buried my mother. I had buried 2 siblings. And I had went through all the religious rhetoric, you keep moving, you got to keep going, where they're at, we don't grieve. And we don't even quote the scripture completely. We say we don't grieve. No, we don't grieve as others. You see what I'm saying? Those that have no hope, but we do grieve, and you do have to watch that a spirit of grief doesn't take root on you or in you, but you need to grieve. It is what God has given you to release the emotions, the part of our soul, that part that we work out with fear and salvation, fear and trembling, that part of our soul. And we don't honor that. Grief is simply a sign that you have loved. And so when my father passed, I would not let anyone I would not allow anyone to have me dishonor that relationship by not grieving. And so it started with him. So when my husband passed, who was the last man in my life, my support system, my protector, my covering, I remember saying the night of the viewing, I thanked everybody for coming. And I asked them the next day when we have his homegoing, please don't come to my family telling us don't cry. Please don't come quoting scriptures and cliches. I know that sounds harsh. But I said, because see, tears are liquid prayers. They're a cleansing. And I don't need you coming to me making comments like, oh, you know where he's at. You don't have to cry. I know where he's at, but I also know where he's not at. And so, yes, it's natural. I'm going to miss him. And there were times I needed to weep. Jesus wept.
Yes.
So how is it that I don't weep? And I did not want my children coming into what I consider a very traditional, religious, legalistic mindset about grief. I didn't want them to learn that or to embrace that. I wanted them, they lost their father. I wanted them to have that honor of releasing him, releasing those emotions that were connected to love and relationship. So that was very helpful. But I still, I went through the grief fog. I went through all of that. My pastor at that time, well, he's still my pastor now, but he was so compassionate. And the Holy Spirit spoke to me and said I needed to get a grief counselor. Well, to be honest with you, Marcia, I really didn't even know grief counselors existed. And so he connected me with a beautiful soul, Jenny. Oh my God, that woman was a gift. I mean, she was an angel walking the earth. So seasoned, such wisdom. And I remember the first time I sat down with her, she drew me a picture, gave me a picture of grief, and it was just a bunch of scribble. And it took me back a little bit, but it's basically, this is what grief looks like. You're all over the place. One day you're up, one day you're down, one day it was just a roller coaster ride, if you will. It was even more abstract than that, if you would. So Jenny helped to prepare me. And then my pastor introduced me to something called Grief Share. And Grief Share at that time, because they do it in sessions and then they break and then they start, another session. So when my husband passed, he passed in June, and that was their break time. And then they started back up in September. So Jenny helped me through those times. She stayed with me. She was very gracious. She met with me on a personal basis. She availed herself to me where I could call her. I mean, she was just wonderful. And then Grief Share, I got enrolled in Grief Share in September, and that became like a support group. And there's something about, I know a lot of people think, oh, I don't need that. You do. You do. And it's just a freedom. He who the sun sets free is free indeed. To communicate with someone that already knows what you're going through. You're feeling the same thing. You're a support system to one another. When I say to you, today's a good day. You get it. You don't take it that I'm completely over everything. Oh, she's fine. I don't need to do this now. I don't need to do that. Or we could be sitting and talking, and we can weep, and we might start laughing about something. I began to get some healthier relationships, people who understood exactly where I was at, and it also kept the compassion flowing for others, because maybe I lost a spouse, but someone else lost a child. Someone else lost their, grandmother, or, whoever it was. It might have been a pet. So your compassion stays open. Those gates stay open instead of you just closing off and going inward, only dealing with just you. So those were some of the things that were very helpful to me. So much so that now where I'm at, and just FYI, I love the title servant. I know I'm a pastor right now, but I love the title servant. And at the church, 715 Universal Road, Deeper Wells, Free Methodist, we now host a grief share group because I now understand the importance of it. And I know so many people that had just about had nervous breakdowns or had them. And they really believe, because when you offer it right out, people, oh, I'm okay, I'll be okay. I need it. I don't need it, they'll say, Then you asked, what were the things that weren't helpful to me? The things that weren't helpful were the people who meant well, but maybe lacked wisdom, such as I'm sure I've done to others. I had people, really, some people came up to me and would say things like, how you doing? And before I could answer them, they'd go, oh, you're strong. You'll be okay. No, they didn't mean harm, but it did harm. Because you asked me how I was, and you didn't even position yourself to hear how I was.
Yes.
The ministry of presence is so powerful. And so the opposite, that ministry of being dismissive, is so painful. I need you to hear me. Jesus had the relationship with Abba God. He taught us, if we call on him, he will do what? He will answer. And those of us that are in ministry, we have to perfect learning how to hear, learning how to listen, being present when someone is talking to us, when someone is sharing their pain, sharing their joy. Weep with those who are weeping, right? Laugh with those who are laughing. And I can't do that if I just dismiss your emotion. I know people mean well, but sometimes what happens is, because your pain is too heavy for them to carry, they position themselves to stay safe. So they can't handle what you're going through, because what you're dealing with, like if you and I are connected, let's say, we're friends that go to lunch and we go to the movies maybe once a week. Well, now I'm not doing that because I'm grieving. I don't want to come out. I don't want to socialize. Well, that affects you. And so you can find yourself getting frustrated because I'm not the Flo that I was before this happened. And so those things like that can be so painful. The other thing that just was not helpful to me was I really needed to be careful that I did not isolate. I could not push myself, and I needed people to understand that. You may, in good faith and with love and compassion, think, Flo, come on, we're going to go to lunch and we're going to go see a movie. And I may agree. Okay, all right, Marcia, we'll go. But when that day and that time comes, I may feel like I can't do it. I can't handle being out. It's sensory overload. I can't do it. Or maybe I can go to the show, but then I can't go out to lunch afterwards. Or maybe I can, you understand what I'm saying? And you need the people to be sensitive to that. So what did not help me is when I found myself trying to make stuff okay for other people. I needed to honor my own grief. And even with my children, who I love dearly, I'm grateful to God. I asked God for 5 children. He answered my prayer. He gave me 5. And I love each and every one of them. But I knew that my children couldn't understand my grief. They lost their father. They can't relate to their mother losing a husband. They haven't lost a husband. I could relate to them losing a father because I had lost my dad. So I got it. But with as much as I love them, Marcia, I did not have it in me. I didn't know how to be a mom to them in their grief. Because I was so lost and consumed with the grief of losing my husband, my covenant partner, where the word of God says the 2 shall be one. And I tell you, out of all the deaths, when I was young, I lost my grandmother. She was the closest thing to me in life. I'm telling you, there was no pain like the pain of losing my husband. Absolutely none.
Yeah. You have touched upon several things. I mean, so many things, but yeah, for one, about the emotional roller coaster, I believe people do need to understand about that you can be, like you're saying, up and down. At one point you can feel like, I know after my mom had passed back in 2007, I think it was maybe a few months later, and I'm feeling like, oh, I think I'm good. And then the next thing you know, I turn on the radio and hear a Ray Charles song, and I'm turning it right off, and I'm in tears because this one particular Ray Charles song I just associated with my mom. It's like, oh no, So yeah, you just never know what might trigger. That's the other thing. You never know. You could be in the grocery store and suddenly, a song comes on, or you're passing a certain cereal that person, liked. And it's like, you just never know. So that
You never know. And, some of us are so analytical, Marcia. And so we think like we're taught when we're grieving, you got to get through your first. So in my mind, when they said first, I'm thinking the first year, right?
Yes.
Get through the first year, the first Christmas, the first birthday, the first holiday, blah, 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 blah. And so a year passes, but those aren't just your first. It's the first time you go to the restaurant that you and him went, or you and that person were together with. It's the first time, there's a lot of first. When you go to the same doctor that you and him went to together, or you and her, whatever it was you did. It was some years later, and some friends were very gracious to me, paid for me to go on vacation with them, and they were just so loving. But what I did, and I was excited about this vacation. And as we were traveling, we were going to the Outer Banks. I did not realize that we were going to be traveling through places that him and I and the family had traveled through and did family vacations on. So when we first started out, let me give you an example. You're talking about first. My husband loved food. He loved steak, and, and we like to do things together. And so we're traveling and we stop at this little place, on the road, this little country spot, and they had steak. My husband loves steak. So while I'm sitting there eating the steak and enjoying the company, I'm thinking, oh, Rick he would have really liked this. He would have really liked this. And we travel and we get into a town, and we stop to stay overnight. And that particular night we went to a restaurant that served hamburgers and lobster rolls, and hamburgers were one of his favorite things. Okay. So we stay overnight, and then I'm driving through towns. We're driving through Norfolk. We're driving through, I'm driving through places that now memories are flooding my mind. And I'm trying to hold back because I'm with people, I don't want to fall apart. I don't want to pull everybody else down, and we got up the next morning and we go to Cracker Barrel. And now it's September. Cracker Barrel is already prepared for Christmas. Christmas was his favorite holiday. By this time, I am inside just like this. and tears are rolling down, and I'm trying to fight back the tears. By the time we got to our vacation spot, I said to them, nothing's wrong. I'm not offended with anybody. And I explained to them what I just explained to you. I said, I need to be by myself. Marcia, I must have cried. I cried so the ugly cry, right? You know, where your eyes are red and, you know, and I stayed in my room for the rest of that day. But these people had such wisdom and were so loving. Now and then somebody would peek in and just see if I was okay. Nobody pressured me, come get something to eat. Do you want this? Do you want? They let me have that time. They honored me with that. And I don't know that they really know how healing it was. You know, and they were so sensitive to what I needed. And it wound up, I had a wonderful time. But I'm telling you, I think we were away for 7 days. I must have dreamed of him just about every night.
Oh my.
Just about every night. You know, that was my first time for that vacation without him, and going through those spaces and doing those things without him. And those were years later.
Yes, yes. And yeah, you're right. When we think of those firsts, because I'm even going to be doing a workshop in January called Facing the First, and it is about facing those first holidays and birthdays and those types of things. But you're right, I had not thought about first in terms of places you're going without that person, or
Activities, weddings, the first wedding you go to without them.
right,
You know,
right.
we had a grandchild born after, you know, so we were excited because my daughter got married, and, you know, I tease them all the time about having grandchildren, and I'm holding this beautiful baby, and yet I'm weeping
Yeah.
because he's not here to share, you know, and I look in the baby and I see him, but I don't have him, and neither does my grandbaby.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's what I mean. This is, you know, such a topic that, you know, so much can be covered about it. And, you know, one thing you had referenced too is earlier in your life, you had lost your grandmother, but how this loss of your husband was so different and impacted you in such a different way. And the same, I could say, I really felt, in terms of grief, that I had so many losses for me, as I would say between the ages of about 11 and 16. I've said for only 2 years I didn't go to a funeral. There was like, you know, a couple brothers, a grandmother, and aunt, then finally my dad when I was 16. And so I felt, oh, yeah, I'm familiar with death. But, you know, that was as a young person, and I don't even think I even understood about grief. But in my adult life, when I had a miscarriage, I mean, that, you know, I felt like that was kind of my introduction to grief, because, you know, I just, the emotions, you know, that came out from that, and just the true sadness, you know, over that loss. So, but yeah, I feel like it's important for people to understand too, you know, you may have gone through a few different losses, several losses, but there's always, to me, death is something you never get used to, or grief. You can't just say, oh, I've been there. Yeah, maybe you have, but that doesn't mean you know the full scope of the many ways that grief can present itself. And but if one thing, you know, like we're saying, it should give you that ability to have that compassion with others, and to have that understanding about with others. Just knowing they may need time alone, but they may also need you to come and, like you're saying, just check in, like real quick. How are you? You know, you doing okay? Things like that. So yeah, and then since we have talked about too grief as at a younger age, I did want to mention that we need to pay attention to sometimes those younger people around us
Yes,
who may be
yes.
grieving someone, if they've had a loss. You know, I just wanted to. I brought something home with me about grief, because with young people, because really this year. Children's Grief Awareness Day is coming up. Well, at the time of this recording, it's coming up, but
Okay.
it's always the Thursday before Thanksgiving. But just a couple of facts. It says But bereaved children feel understood and validated when caregivers openly discuss the person and or the death. And
Yes.
then another thing they said of critical importance, they're saying that 7 in 10 teachers currently have at least one student in their class who has lost a parent, guardian, sibling, or someone close to them in the past year. So we can see that there are probably young people in our sphere, who have lost someone and need us as adults to even be willing to let them talk about what they're going through if they want to talk, and just touch base again and see, how are you doing? How are you coping with things? How are you managing? What would you say on that, Pastor Flo?
I think I don't know that I could say it much better than what you just quoted, because I think we have a tendency to sometimes dismiss children's feelings. We think that children are resilient, they get over it, but they're going through the same thing. I can't imagine, for example, my one daughter got married and my other daughter, she hasn't gotten married yet, but she won't have her father to walk her down the aisle. And then a special relationship that they have. And I think, again, like I said, we have to watch that we're not dismissive. And even me as the mom, I openly admit I was so, my heart, even when I talk to you about it now, my heart still hurts so that I didn't have enough energy if that's the word to use, to be able to show. I didn't even know how to show up for them, honestly. I did the best I could, but that part about talking and sharing, I tried my best. We're getting ready to go into the holidays, and I tried my best that when it was to keep some of the family traditions. The children also wanted to do things like when Father's Day came, they wanted to release balloons or do something to honor him. When his birthday came, they wanted to do something. And after a while, it just became too hard for me. I think it was, what would it have been? I think it would have been his birthday. And the children wanted to go and release balloons and all of that. And so I went to be supportive with them. But when we did it, I think I cried harder than I cried the day of the funeral. Because you have to remember, when you're the one handling the business, you don't get to grieve like everybody else. Because literally what happens is it's 3:00, the time of death. At 3:30, you're making decisions as to who's picking the body up. Is the morgue coming? Are they going to the funeral home? You got to go pick out the clothes. You got to go pick out the casket. You know what I'm saying? You go straight into business mode. And then, everybody's around you for a week or two. And then you start getting things in the mail. We're sorry to hear about your loss, but we're sorry to, if in my case, I'm a woman, I didn't do anything with the cards. I remember the first time that I needed an oil change. You'd have thought I was getting a heart transplant, So children, think about when they go to school and they're or they're part of something, and maybe it's a father-daughter dance. Maybe they're playing it. I remember my son was trying out for something, and I remember the words that came out of his mouth. He said, "Daddy's not going to get to see this. When I achieve this, my father's not going to be here." That broke my heart. So you have to be sensitive and allow them to grieve. You need them and they need you, but sometimes you can't show up for each other the way that you may have the expectation of that happening. And I needed to allow them, my youngest one, was still living at home. And so him and his dad, in the middle of the night, that there's their chit chats in the morning. They're talking about sports. I don't know anything about sports. So, they had a special relationship. And so him staying in the house was too much for him after that. So you have to make sure you release them with no condemnation. I understand. Some people manifest their grief in anger. Allow them to be angry. Allow them that.
Yes.
You know, don't overload the expectation. Well, now dad's gone. You need to do this and you need to do that. Don't do that. Let them walk through their journey and be there with them as much as you can. And if you can't do it physically, be there as much as you can spiritually by way of prayer, love, and compassion. You know, sometimes the only thing you can do is weep together, but at least don't add anything to them. Don't put any more pressure on them. Well, you know, your father's not here. You should at least be doing this, or you should at least be doing that. They don't need that right now. It may be too much for them. And when the children are younger, remember, they don't have the vocabulary to put around their emotions. We're grown, and I didn't have the words to put around my emotions, you know?
Yes.
And I think the worst thing you can do is let's not act like it didn't happen. Open up that door and let them have the conversation, however that conversation looks like for them. Don't try to take control of it so quick. Just be willing to have it, you know? And it may be something as simple as you're coloring with them and they pick up the blue crayon and, I see you picked up dad's favorite color or your brother's favorite color or your friend, whoever it is. Oh, you picked up so-and-so's favorite color. That really looks nice. I bet so-and-so would like that. Watch their expressions. Maybe that comment might be too much for them. Maybe it's just right, but let them know it's okay to still remember. It's okay to still talk about. There are people that I know that have lost children. They said some of the things that hurt them is that the child's not remembered. Nobody wants to talk about it. Birthday comes, they still remember. He'd be 16 by now. He'd be in college by now. You know, and nobody's discussing that. And so they wrestle with that internally on their own. Even with the holidays coming up, Marcia, I have had to learn, adopt some new family traditions because some of it was just too painful. Like I said, Christmas was his favorite holiday. And I mean, come Christmas, my house looked like a winter wonderland, you know, and I bought him something every year. So, but I couldn't bring myself to bring all that stuff out. I tried it the first year. It was too much because when you're touching the memories, you're touching them. Even if you're pulling out Christmas globes or different little things little novelties that they like, not only are you pulling them out for Christmas, you got to pack them back up. And so I'm putting them away and I have already put him away. So it's like I'm putting him away a second time. Does that make sense? You know?
Yes.
And so we had to learn. Somebody said, what are you doing for Thanksgiving this year? Well, this year I'm just going to relax and I'm going to a little historical town, me and a friend of mine. And you know, I'm just going to relax and have a spa day and let the restaurant cook my Thanksgiving dinner. It's sometimes the memories are too much.
Yeah.
You know, because there's still that empty seat at the table. And sometimes it's healing. You know, we sit around and we laugh, you know, oh, he or she would have really liked this, or he and she would have a fit about this, you know, and it become, you know, you can laugh, but other times it's too much. Give yourself the grace. Give yourself the grace.
Yes. Well, Pastor Flo, thank you so much for not only being here, but for openly sharing with us, you know, about your own personal grief. And I'm certainly sorry for your loss. But, you know, to everyone out there, thank you for joining us. I do hope you have learned something here. I know a lot of times, you know, this is for chaplains or those in ministry, but you know what? You may need this for yourself or for someone else you know. So please, if you've gotten something from this conversation, like it, please share it with someone else. And I invite you to come back. Until next time, please be well, be encouraged, and do plan to be here next time for another 30 Minutes With. All right. Thank you and God bless you.